Greetings and welcome to this Thursday's Joko conversation. And I hope you like our little intro and outro music, that little bump, New York stroll. The more I hear it, it's just a nice little groove. I want to hear more of it, actually, the more I listen to it. But anyway, I'm Youssef, member of the Joko Collective. Happy to be here with you. I'm also a poet and a professor of composition and creative writing, literature, the humanities, and a scholar of cultural studies, the role of culture in the construction, the maintenance, the challenge to power, right? And the power as it exists. And as always, I am joined by the original convener of the Joko, Tasha. Hi, Tasha.
Hi, Yusuf, and greetings, everybody. Um, Glad to be here today. Today is a good day for resistance. Today is a good day to know who you are and where you are and what you're trying to do up in all of this. And so, per usual, we begin with our acknowledgments, right? And we're doing them in different ways these days. And our acknowledgement of lineages, um, from our personal lineages to the African family group lineages. Um, and we always end in gratitude to the First Nations people on whose lands, unceded territories, we do liberation work. And so, breaking it up a little bit in terms of how we do those acknowledgments and salutes, I'm going to ask us to chat and share um, about, in the spirit of Black August, a resistance story from our personal lineage, from our group lineage, anything that is resonant in your spirit, anything that has been a constant source of inspiration, little known story that that you'd like to share, and I will have something to share as well. And let us salute our lineages today with stories of resistance. You're muted, or at least I can't hear you.
I said on that point, if as we're telling resistance stories for Black August, um, we are in the midst of the 60th anniversary of the Watts Rebellion, of the Watts Uprising, August 1965, August 11th, 1965, right? So that would be, this week, right? That 60 years ago, Watts and what came to be called the Watts curfew area, much wider than Watts. Yeah, and the Watts rebellions, the Watts uprising. I think maybe better known or alternatively known as the Watts riots. But no, that is a misnomer because historians have recognized, right, through historical research, right, through gathering information of the participants, right, interviewing participants, that it was as opposed to a riot,
Mhm.
it may have emerged spontaneously, right, through um, a again, a brutal interaction precipitated by the Los Angeles Police Department. Um, so, though it may have emerged spontaneously, right, the community reacting to a particular family being mishandled, mistreated, um, brutalized, by the LAPD, that resistance very soon became organized, and it was much more of an actual insurrection, um, with organized, moving, or I should say, mobile um, cadres of community members, right, waging battle with the Los Angeles Police Department and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and any of the other local agencies that may have come in that they have called in may have called in for reinforcements. And it ended up much wider than Watts.
Mm.
So the Watts, what's known as the Watts curfew area, reached as far north and west for people who have some sense of Los Angeles geography, to I think as far as like what was then Santa Barbara and Vermont, so almost USC and the Coliseum area, which is well beyond Watts, right? Um, and at least, yeah, it's been written about by participants, and in the one of the recent histories, um, what is it? Set the Night on Fire, Los Angeles in the '60s. Um, John Weiner and Mike Davis. Mike Davis writes a first-person account of his participation as a white kid living, near USC, um,
Mhm.
and that the rebellion became more widespread than just the black resistance,
Mhm.
as other communities, and youth joined in. So that we need to commemorate that for sure, right? As we are in the home of what at the time I think was the largest urban insurrection in the United States. I don't think it was equaled until nearly 30 years later with the uprising following the Simi Valley verdict of that released the cops that beat Rodney King. I don't like to call it the Rodney King verdict because he wasn't on trial, right?
Correct.
But
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
so it's
Yes.
funny how we get turned in, even as the victims, right? Somehow we get turned into the perpetrator. The So anyway, that was an important moment of resistance, and it did signal particular types of changes here in the Los Angeles area, as folks figured they better do something quick to appease these people, um,
Mm.
and so several programs emerged out of that, one of which is, the subject of my dissertation, the Performing Arts Society of Los Angeles, which was founded by Moto Jiko Van Tile Whitfield, uh, very much in response, right, as to give, folks the community, right, a place for personal and social development, um, and many other things come out of it. The Watts Summer Games, the Watts Festival, right, Summer Festival, um,
Right.
maybe even what's the other place? Arts. I mean, so many of the art, the Watts Writers Workshop, right? He emerges out of it, and
Mhm.
the Inner City Cultural Center. A lot of things responding directly to that, including political momentum, right? That begins to, dare I say, make the LA City Council and
Hmm.
county supervisors begin to look more representative, at least.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, pave the way for Mayor Tom Bradley's for, unsuccessful run and then eventual successful run um, for the mayorship, um, as well as a fertile ground for more radical solutions,
Mhm.
like the fast growth of the Black Panther Party Southern California chapter. A year later, or a year plus later, as the party is founded in 1966. So anyway, I'm taking more time than I expected on that
Fantastic.
resistance, but that's to be
Fantastic.
commemorated, right? That this month, this week is the
Yes,
60th
sir.
anniversary of that rebellion.
Yes, sir. Wonderful. Wonderful. Just great. And so before I share my personal lineage resistance story, just have to respond to that and your description of the um, the actual spirit of organization
Mhm,
and thoughtful insurrection and deliberation,
mhm,
and the pointing to that period of artistic flourishing, right?
mhm,
And it took me to two places, and then also couching um, Bradley's ultimately successful one, right? Took me to a couple of personal places. One, Watt Stacks, another,
mhm,
the incredible Watt Stacks con-
mhm,
concert. Um, just that exuberant, absolutely a conflict-free gathering of
mhm.
how many hundreds of people, you know,
Filled the
in
Coliseum.
filled the Coliseum in absolute celebration of culture, um, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And in terms of that outreach and that spirit uh, uh, of an awakened community, right? One of the things that Watt Stacks did as a documentary is went
Yeah,
beyond that concert, right?
yeah.
And talked to people in the community, captured community reflections, right? Touches me. My mom was one of the
Mhm,
reflections so caught, right? People call me to this day.
mhm,
Is that your mom? He's like, yes, it
mhm,
is. Talking about
mhm.
sitting there doing uh, 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 a braiding hairstyle,
Yeah,
right, in her wrap dress, and saying what she had to say. So, these it's important to feel the livingness of a moment,
mhm,
be able to take it into the bosom, right, and say, there it is, there I am. Another place, Tom Bradley, right,
mhm.
as we learned when we did our Art in the World We Want series on dance, and our Ian Zinga Kamara talked about the history of djembe style, Guinea style dance coming into Los Angeles, and the um, uh, event of Tom Bradley creating an artistic space,
Yeah,
or not creating, but what would be the word? Bequeathing, using essentially a property that he had available to him
right.
as mayor.
Appropriating, or yes, or
Right.
resourcing, whatever.
Resourcing, right, to house and support the these traditional artists from Guinea
Yeah.
as they developed the uh, um, think it was Kumpo. Don't get me lying. Let me take that back. Don't get me lying. But the original uh, uh, Guinea style dance troupe in Los
Mm-hmm.
Angeles. And right, so gave space and resource to cultivate that. And so that I got to, and people in my generation, right, friends that I've made and that are friends to this day, got to start doing Guinea style dance, right, in Los Angeles when we were 20. Um, so um, resistance is important. Resistance does uh, a fine example of the fruit of our resistance, the spirit that our resistance is uh, uh, done in, is performed in, is expressed in, right? As one of, ultimately life giving,
Mm-hmm.
right? Life giving liberation. This kind of always this kind of question and this dichotomy that's projected, false dichotomy, again, that false equivalency, um, the notion of the race riots rather than the mob massacre, this false dichotomy of violence, nonviolence, and isn't all violence the same? And is that violence, and isn't destroying city property? And what about the looting and all of that stuff? Um, proof of the pudding. Proof of the proof of the pudding is also in the fruit it bears. Speaking of dichotomy, as you were talking, recently consumed this read by Kelly Carter Jackson, We Refuse, A Forceful History of Black Resistance. And it's a great read. Just want to put it out there. It's a great read or listen. I'm an audiobook, right? So I consume books as I'm driving. And it's one of the things, in fact, I'm just going to read a little excerpt so that I don't go on a tangent. Um, Kind of a basic summation, and it captures quite a bit, an important bit, right? A description: Black resistance to white supremacy is often reduced to a simple binary between Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s nonviolence and Malcolm X's by any means necessary. In We Refuse, historian Kelly Carter Jackson urges us to move past this false choice, offering an unflinching examination of the breadth of Black responses to white oppression, particularly those pioneered by women. And so, yes, she does do an excellent debunking of what she names as the false dichotomy between violence and nonviolence as reaction, as if there's ever a context where in white supremacists and in colonial oppression, where it's not a context of self-defense, right? And very effectively describes how so many of our cultural practices and just ways of being in public, in the public commons, and integrated and pre-integrated, you know, kind of America, whatever that means, highly qualified integration, um, comes from a place of resistance. So the book is a really great examination of all of our modes of resistance and how they are effective, right? And so, very effective argument about coming out of that binary. And the personal story, I will share a personal story of resistance. This resistance as direct um, direct response to white terrorist violence, and it is our family lore, right? Um, Spoken of in hushed tones, right? But still spoken of. And the story told of who would be my triple great grandfather, um, on my mother's side, who we're talking about my mother's people, whose sister was attacked by some local marauding, you know, white men with the license to rape and do what they will, and that the triple great grandfather um, unalived that individual, and as a result was forced to move the family from Alabama or Georgia into Texas, right? Kind of had to get out of town, but that's the family lore, and one that resonates and carries a lot, has a lot of currency, in the family, and go in terms of feeding our sense of identity with a resistant attitude, with a resistant attitude. So just on the face of that, the importance of having stories of resistance and the history of resistance, and the way, before I shut up, the noting the way that those narratives are suppressed, the true narrative of constant resistance, and what the success of that resistance means and actually looks like, outside of the spectacular total overthrow of of an institution, of a structure, of a governmental um, piece. What does it actually look like? What do those gains mean? What have those gains meant, um, as we've successfully resisted and directly resisted, with everything we have at our disposal? So, salutation to that. And in respect and salutation that we always pay, taking another short excerpt from at indigenous underscore revolution.com. Let's see what this brother has to say.
This is how a real American looks. Before America existed on my land, my people were already here. You are not the owners of America. Today, you dress your ancestors in gentle words, settlers, pioneers, as if poetry could cleanse the blood from their hands.
They say they took from the Indian because there were no laws. But what are laws if not moral code? Biblical passages, the 10 Commandments they claim to believe, they broke every one. They stole. They murdered. They coveted. They bore false witness against us. They dishonored their own God while pretending to act in his name.
Okay.
Yes.
And we're off.
That is the truth.
Yes.
What I think, if I remember right, aho was how you stamp that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that. And it brings us, I mean, that's where we are. What this is titled, right? Colonial Fantasies and Fascist Dreams. Because there is a lot of talk about fascism right now, and appropriately so. But as was pointed out last week, as we pointed out Sunday rather, and as many others have pointed out, what was identified as fascism in Europe 100 years ago, and since, right, and which was in its own way a very popular movement in all of the colonizing countries. But that has been the colonial behavior, right? That has been the behavior of the colonizer before the word fascism was ever made up. And since, right, is a complete disregard for the human rights, the human worth of people, the smashing of dissent, taking control of culture, this claims to doing it all from a point of defense, right? Protecting civilization, whatever, all the various claims.
Mm.
And it becomes fascism when it is turned inward, so to speak, right? When the colonizing country begins to treat its own citizens or sectors of its citizens in the same way, those who don't want to get on board in a particular way. And I also think it's important, the modern founder of the fascist movement, Benito Mussolini,
Mm-hmm.
in an interview, because it as we talked about, I think a couple of weeks ago, right? Fascism has, and to a certain extent, I think colonialism, it puts on the face, or at least a kind of claim of being for the working class, right? Or it makes an appeal to the salt of the earth, sort of thing, right? And in the settler colonial narratives, right? These rugged pioneers, but who are distinguished from the elites that sit in the colonial cities or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But despite that, right, it has never been anything but hostile to actual workers' power, right? And Mussolini, asked to define fascism, in some particular interview, said, well, really it should be called corporatism, because of that close relationship,
Mm-hmm.
incestuous even relationship,
Mm-hmm.
with the corporate capitalism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And corporations have always underwritten fascist governments, right? And been quite happy, because fascism, again, despite its claims to its iconography of the noble worker, representing the best of the race or nation, it's extremely hostile, right, to labor and labor rights and all that. Corporatism, right? So um, colonial fantasies, fascist dreams, and the deployment of these National Guard in DC. Because that has always been both a fantasy of colonialism and a dream of fascist, and a practice of both of them, right? To eliminate population, right? To unleash genocidal terror on its targeted populations. And that has been African populations everywhere, indigenous populations everywhere, any of the folks that are considered, impure, and not even and that so-called impurity goes well with, and is a kind of a corollary to the discourse of getting rid of the unfit, also, right? And indeed, our melanation is treated like a disability, a curse, and folks are, they've been wanting this for a long time, right? A chance to militarize the cities that are perceived to be, that are black cities, or perceived to be black cities, at least since what we were opened with, right? At least since the the demonstrations and rebellions of the 1960s into the 70s, and there has been a steady discourse, because I remember growing up with it, that crime is out of control, cities are out of control, and that has always been barely euphemism for the Negroes and the natives are out of control. And they need to be put back in under control. Go ahead.
Just the as we look tonight, because I know you're gonna dig into the what is it, Benny Johnson pronouncement, and all of, as a just model example of the expression of the fantasy and of the expression, all of the and the way that that those who are in that mode are just kind of, you can almost see it, there's kind of reveling in this sense of power, that sense of power. I was thinking about it the other day, or whenever I was thinking about it, this morning, the other day, what have you, but it's in terms of the end, what is the end of this really, at base. And, and I'm just saying it, and it's just a reflection. This isn't about culture. This isn't about heritage. This isn't about progress. This isn't about, what I'm saying, all the things that it's done in the name of. It's really about that need for power, for a feeling of an expression of power that is akin to when they talk about rape being an act of power, as we talked about Sunday, being an act of power and not having anything to do with sex. Actually, sex is the expression, but all of this, is about gratifying that, is about scratching that itch, that thing, that sociopathic thing, that sadistic thing, that morphs into all of these places where there is that, that need for even the feeling of power, and again, I'm not trying to be a social psychologist or any of these kinds of things, but just like when you look at the mythical quality of it and the myth-based quality of it, there's got to be an awareness of that. What benefit is it to attacking all of this scientific research in the name of elevating this myth? The stuff that is actually going to help you be on Earth and, maintain the body and all of these kinds of things. To hell with that. It's all about the myth. And if the truth gets in the way, literally, if reality gets in the way, then we actively turn away from reality, because we must have this, this God complex, this projection of
part
power.
of what's so disturbing, right? Yeah, this complete rejection of scientific inquiry, or the results of that inquiry, right? And I don't even know that all the people who oppose it are, it's like it is off. It's primarily reactionary. Just sort of a knee-jerk reaction to anything that presents a challenge to the quote-unquote American way of life. The anything that gets in the way of notions of instant gratification, that that we should be able to just throw our trash anywhere, sort of thing, or drive the kinds of muscle cars we want because these are tied into American identity, right? And that American identity is a product of the advertising agencies over the last 100 years or whatever, really, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the other corporations, right? And why it's so it's a function of the well-funded misinformation coming from the fossil fuel energy companies, right? That people have picked up on, and because it becomes part of what it means to be conservative or
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even know if those labels matter in the same way anymore, right? But this
Mm-hmm.
notion of, but
Mm-hmm.
what conservatism has come to mean, and it's just the ironies of it. To be a conservative is to reject conservation, right? At the same time, the all that stuff, right? It's you white working class man in particular,
Mm-hmm.
all the various sectors of the working class, including those folks who are called white collar workers, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do your displeasure, your difficulty in making ends meet, being able to afford your medicine,
Yep.
has nothing to do with employment and other things opening up, right, to women, people of color,
Right.
or rather, it has nothing to do with the fact that we haven't raised your wages, right, or the minimum wage or anything
Yeah.
like that, or provided
Yeah.
a social infrastructure in which you and everybody else can thrive. The problem is these other people trying to get in on what you got, right, and
Mm-hmm.
are upsetting the cart and bringing America down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, despite the evidence, right? Evidence doesn't matter. It's just the narrative that matters. And again, beginning in the 1965, and certainly
Mm-hmm.
probably say before
Mm-hmm.
that, but
Mm-hmm.
that the passage of the Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, 1965, and then you get a rebellion, a major rebellion, in Watts. Other folks in the street, right? Student walkouts,
Mm-hmm.
everybody up in arms. They've been crying crime and disorder, and look at the end of our
Yes.
civilization. Ever
Yes.
since.
Forever. Yes. And forever. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And this is why we white
Mm-hmm.
men, white Christian men in particular, need to be in control,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and not wanting to hear other stories, right? Hear other sides of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So these colonial fantasies and fascist dreams being played out in multiple ways. So yeah, we're set to talk about the DC deployment as a measure of this. Certainly the ICE raids have been a measure of this, because we know this is primarily ethnic cleansing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Stephen Miller has actually been clear about that. This is
Mm-hmm.
even though he hasn't used that language, right? They're using
Mm-hmm.
the language of criminality and all that, but it's an ethnic cleansing.
Mm-hmm.
That we know is going on. The But despite all that, right? Despite that part of it, these other things that have been happening just this week and really since January 20th, to promote the myth
Mm-hmm.
and squash all narrative. So we're hearing about what the Smithsonian
Yes.
exhibits are coming under review, right?
Yes.
And whether or not they are telling a pro-American story or not, right? The defunding of PBS is a major thing, and NPR. I mean, it's enough that Sesame Street is and Reading Rainbow, right? Are just quality children's programming, research-based children's programming,
Research based.
and of course, research is
That
being
part.
defunded. All kinds of research is being defunded.
Absolutely.
But I'm
Absolutely.
also thinking about the things that that without PBS and without the National Endowment for the Arts and for the Humanities, the works that we aren't going to see, the point of view series, right, with independent
Yes.
filmmakers telling particular stories, the
Mm-hmm.
American experience
Mm-hmm.
stories,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
There used to be Voices and
Series.
Visions, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's
Mm-hmm.
going to now? I would make what happens to American Masters?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are so many
Mm-hmm.
things
Yes.
that artists who otherwise wouldn't have access, right? Because they aren't doing something
Yeah.
deemed to be commercial.
Yeah.
So that's all about controlling the narrative, right? And promoting the myth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we spent some time talking about eugenics on the last time we got together on Sunday.
Mhm.
And this is it's we're in that era. That era hasn't, the that dynamic is very interesting to me, the dynamic between the time that it takes for, an idea to saturate, the population, and then through whatever means the idea is dismantled, and then that dismantling has to take, whatever time to penetrate and saturate. But the thing about it is the dismantling of the concepts and the ideas established with
Yeah.
eugenics, the propaganda behind that, the propaganda push, or the way in which those notions were propagated, the debunking and the cry of the pseudoscientificness and all of the things it doesn't match by a fraction. That there's no banner that says, what, this is wrong, pseudoscience, that means we need to make major changes. Okay, the major changes we need to make in order to align with what, with the current understanding in this self-perception also of progress and advancement,
Mhm.
in alignment with science and reason and the light of the world. But hey, they're not even about that anymore. We're moving into theocratic,
Mhm.
theocracy, and how they're going to
That's right.
reconcile these things. Who knows? Because, the last we heard, Europeans were superior because of their scientific
That's
advancement.
right. That's right.
That was the last we heard.
Right.
So
Right.
now you're just going to be God's chosen people again.
Now, right. That has shifted, right?
But of course, it all works in together, right? It all works in
It
together
does. It
because
does.
this is
Because
the
that
conversation.
was part of the myth, right? There, the scientific prowess was part of the myth.
Absolutely, and really very and key to the resonance of the term Western civilization
Hmm.
and civilization, right? That was the whole piece, right? These are the uncivilized people, the primitives, and
Hmm.
drawing that, supplying world culture with that imagery of the evolution of man, whatever came before. The pinnacle of the man is a European,
It's a
right?
European
And
man.
his male, is a
Right, right. A Northern European
man.
man. Right.
Yes, right. And so that just really reflecting on the nature of the fantasy, the fantastic
Hmm.
quality, and the
Hmm.
disconnect, the uh, uh, ongoing disconnect with actual scientific to use a phrase that needs some better development and better articulation, but we know what we're saying, right? Research based, verified, subjected to falsification and re-verified, and coming to a consensus in a community of people who have similar skills, and all of those things are what we mean by science, because that anyway.
Yeah, right. The practice of a scientific process to construct knowledge, right? To make something knowable, or to as a way of knowing it, not guessing it, or creating narratives around it, but how to know it, right?
How to know it as a substantial thing, as a real thing, as a thing that has, because it's important.
As a multifaceted thing, right?
Exactly, as a multifaceted thing, connected in multifaceted ways to observable phenomena,
and part of a network of things.
Yes.
And exactly.
Yes.
And the ongoingness of that, right? Because there's always a new question to ask about it.
Yes. So how does it also stand? Yes. So how does it also stand the test of time?
Right.
And right? How resilient is the idea, the model, the conclusion that has been arrived at, right? And this, as we were saying, is we mentioned last time, Dietrich Bonhoeffer in Stupidity, that choice to choose the non-rational over the rational, in the name of, relieving some kind of pressure, whatever that pressure is. Huge, broad brush, but just that in terms of that essential motive that's described, times get tough, the intelligence start conforming with the group, no matter how stupid the conclusion is. But yeah, so eugenics hasn't gone anywhere, which is why has not been, the debunking of eugenics has not saturated any population or public. Folk don't even know the short history of that. We're totally there.
That's right. It just,
so we don't have anything to compare it
we'll
to.
stop using the word, we'll stop using the name, calling it that, and continue in these particular ways, right? And
yes,
because we're still, they never stop giving IQ tests.
Never.
And all these sorts of things. And now,
right.
The the worship of the celebration of the fit body, a particular kind of fit body, this is sort of the joke for many years, right? The joke about baseball, because you don't have to be fit, so to speak, or baseball has had many athletes over the years who do not look like athletes, right? Especially particularly pitchers often, right? So but they they are the exception that proves the rule, because everybody, there's the perfect pitcher's body, so to speak. And so these people, they stand out in particular ways. And that the popularity of that, right? That role that sports has played, and why in the United States, when there is a elite white athlete, that athlete is so celebrated. Right, because there are plenty of elite athletes, but we know since the 1960s, certainly basketball and football,
right,
and North American football, and increasingly soccer, right? The African presence,
absolutely,
has done nothing but grown, right?
Right.
Baseball, the African presence has done an interesting thing. For by the mid 80s, I think, more than 50% of the league could be described, and we're talking about baseball now, major leagues, could probably be described as African American, at least 50%. And then that dropped off precipitously, right, in the 90s and after. So African American is very small, but not the lack of Africans, right? Because the number of Dominicans and Afro-Venezuelans and Colombians and Panamanians and Cubans increasingly. And there's some place I'm forgetting, right? Puerto Rico. How could I forget Puerto Rico? So there's still a significant African presence in Major League Baseball, but increasingly Spanish speaking and increasingly Asian, right? But all of that goes against the idealized, body, which partly explains, though I don't think they're completely happy about it, I'm hesitating to say embrace, because I do think it's really what's the word I'm looking for? Conditional, right? But the way in which MAGA or the right wing, the militant white racist, want to embrace Caitlin Clark in the WNBA because she's elite, right? She is absolutely wonderful athlete, incredible basketball player, right? But she doesn't really quite fit their model, right? I mean, she isn't blonde, for one thing, right? And she also isn't MAGA, as far as I can tell. I mean, they don't like, right, when she honors the Black women, that made the league and, struggled. So there is a league and it survived, right? So that there's a league for her to come into, right? And how dare her, right, honor those women. But, she's as close as they get right now. That's why is partly the popularity of Tom Brady when he was playing, because he looks like a model. He's sort of that idealized body that they would prefer. So all of that, right? Just again, the ways that, without calling it eugenics, eugenics has remained such a critical part of the popular culture of this society.
And without a similar campaign of which precisely is what they can't stand a sprinkling of, with the back to the Sydney Sweeney ad hullabaloo, and all of the conversation, like the era of woke is over, and all the bodies that we won't see, and and what a travesty seeing those bodies are, and how ridiculous, and how, you know what I'm saying? And
yes,
if you're not 300 pounds, what was the comment? If you're not 300 pounds and a 300-pound trans woman, then you're no longer beautiful, and all of the, it's like, must everything be a lie? Must you lie about everything?
Everything. I know. It's just like, are you serious?
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
As
it's
someone,
ridiculous.
Yes, a comedian whose name you will know, whose name I don't know, but European American comedian, with that presentation. She's blonde and blue and all these things, and she did a spiel on the on that discourse, and she was like, and she asserted, as if there's ever been underrepresentation of blonde and blue white women, or
Right.
I'm saying, blonde and blue European women, and clearly non-blonde European women who become blondes by way of the bottle, by way of the tint bottle.
Speaking of which, isn't that Sydney Sweeney?
Sydney Sweeney is one. I don't think she's made any bones about that.
Right, because it's such a common thing, right?
Anybody.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And that's actually kind of interesting to me, just how blatant, just how stark, just how, desperate for the fantasy, desperate for the fantasy, you are to sit up and assert, whichever one of them it was, Megyn Kelly or Laura Ingraham, about how Beyonce's blonde isn't natural and Sydney Sweeney is or Beyonce's fake and Sydney Sweeney is natural. It's like, no, and everybody knows
Actually,
that
no,
not.
right.
So it's really kind of wild. But also, when you talk about that fit body, where is that more epitomized than in the military body?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? How much footage in in military propaganda,
Yeah.
right? In the military propaganda that is the commercial propaganda,
Yep.
is showing the boot camp
The boot
focus.
camp. That's right.
It's all about the workout. It's all about the building of the muscle and and all of these kinds of things.
Mhm.
Not about, the war is not about generals or policymakers or the people who,
Strategy. No, it's right. It's the fit.
right, in a
Yeah.
way that it perhaps used to be. And maybe that was wartime
Be all you can be.
television, because I can remember seeing a common feature of movies and television stories was like the little kind of like the little war game, or like you'd see generals in a war room with all of the pieces on the map, and they'd
Mhm.
be moving around the things, and and you'd see the soldiers, and you'd see this kind of thing. I have, to suggest this other component of military presence, but what we mainly eat is boot camp and busting in and running through, and definitely the six packs and the this and the
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. It's interesting. The what was it? There was the film. Believe this was an '80s film. Correct me if I'm wrong. G.I. Jane. Was it G.I.
Mhm.
Jane? Yeah, right.
Yeah. G.I. Jane. That was the 90s, I think.
Was the '90s? Okay.
Mhm. I
Yeah,
think so.
Demi Moore.
I think late 80s or early 90s.
Something. I think early '90s. But anyway, the iconic images of Demi Moore, right?
Right. G.I. Jane. Yeah.
G.I. Jane, right? The
Um,
muscle
what's
shirt.
her name? Right. Because she's joining the SEALs. Was that it?
I
Uh,
didn't see the film.
I
I
think so.
don't
I
even
think, yeah.
think I saw the film. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the idea. A woman, maybe the first
Yes.
woman SEAL, perhaps.
Yeah.
I didn't see the movie either. But do we need to see the movie? We already know what it is.
We already know what it is. We know the
Right.
story we can
Yeah.
predict. We can predict. But again,
Exactly. So,
the emphasis on her physicality.
and right, because you got to be tough. And so,
Yeah.
fast forward now several decades, right? Because I do think that was the early 90s. And so 30 years later,
Mm-hmm.
that's what maybe they're going. How many seasons have they had now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you be a Navy SEAL, right? TV show
Mm-hmm.
as celebrities, right? Compete in the various training exercises that the Navy SEALs do, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and celebrities who are, athletes or very already fit,
Mm-hmm.
actors, actresses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are, so here we're going to take it up a notch, right? You're a world-class athlete, but can you do this? And
Mm-hmm.
so again, a way of hierarchizing those bodies, right? The
Mm-hmm.
physically fit body prepared for war
Mm-hmm.
or covert operation
Mm-hmm.
is a notch up from
Mm-hmm.
the athlete's physique, right? And
Mm-hmm.
all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's those are the ways that the eugenics
Mm-hmm.
ideal continues with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
again, in sports, especially now, and maybe this has always been the case, but you hear it a lot now, as a lot of several generations of athletic families, right? And so you get juniors and thirds, and coming into these sports, and you will hear announcers and commentators and talent evaluators say, well, that he or that she's got good genes. Her father was a world class, whatever. Mother was a world class volleyball player. here, this is quite common, right? This is common parlance in a lot of sports commentary, and because
Yes.
because a
It's
lot of
common parlance.
young people's parents, they were
It's common
athletes, and
parlance.
they grew up athletic and all,
Right.
but that language is used. Good
Yeah.
genes. Right?
Yes.
They've got good genes because they're parents, right?
And so these things exist side by side in the popular discourse.
Mhm.
An actual expression of or an actual relationship, a discourse that's actually related to contemporary genetic science, genetic
Mhm.
research, and genetic understanding side by side with these eugenic notions, right?
Mhm.
And these concepts of good gene, bad gene, and all these that fundamental concept,
Mhm.
the qualification,
Mhm.
that heavily laden qualification of good and bad, and selectivity, and all of was conversation about designer babies and all those kinds of things. And um anyway, it's
And
a conundrum. Mhm.
it submerged in that was something that's always struck me about the language of sports, at least in the United States, is that history of attempting to breed us, right, for
Absolutely. Yes.
whatever kind of ideal enslaved person for
Qualities.
this work or that work, and
Right.
um,
Right.
type stuff, right? That
Right.
and
Yes.
sort of the language of the thoroughbred, right? That you.
Hmm.
But I think about so if a thoroughbred horse that gets studded out, I mean, honestly, how many of its offspring become winners? I mean, there's no
Good
guarantee. Right?
question.
That's kind
That is a good question, because
of
it
all the
the
many they may
discourse
be
stops
siring,
there.
right?
Hmm?
Or however many the mare is going to
Right.
birth because of her genes, right? And
Right.
but this is very much a part of the whole thoroughbred racing business. In fact, that's probably the biggest part of the business, right? The studding fees and
Hmm.
all that, right? Because you aren't racing year round, and the
Hmm.
horses can't race until they're a year, 2 years old, 3 years old, uh,
Mm.
often, right? And but
Mm.
you get a horse that's a winner,
Mhm.
mare, stallion,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then you're going to make money on its offspring,
Mhm.
on the hope that somehow those genes, the genes for that speed, whatever, were passed
Mhm.
on. Um,
Mhm.
and this is basically what people are thinking about athletes.
Mhm.
And the what the the thing about modern sports in the United States that's always been weird to me, or just every time I hear it, echoes the history of slavery in this country, when players get traded.
Mhm.
Just they get traded,
Mhm.
right? And they're
Mhm.
spoken of in that way, right?
Yes.
When they're traded or sold,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Now of course they're
Mhm.
saying they're selling the contract, right? Or they're trading contracts, right? But that's not the language they use, though. And even that, if that's
No.
legally what's happening, the
Right.
language is you're trading players or you're buying and selling players,
Yes.
right? And
The
until
slave
the
culture.
1970s,
Yeah.
at least in baseball,
Mhm.
until the 1970s, once you signed with the team,
Mhm.
you were the teams unless they traded you, right? There
Mhm.
was no such thing
Mhm.
as a free agent.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
could not, the
Right.
team, and that's coming right out of 19th century, when baseball was, 19th century thinking about workers and workers'
Mhm.
bodies.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
anyway,
Mhm.
all of that,
Mhm.
it is all of a piece, right? And
It's all of a piece.
that always felt weird, icky,
Mhm. Mhm.
illuminating the
Mhm.
language of trading,
Mhm.
buying, selling players.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and then,
Yes.
the discourse among fans
Yes.
about these selfish players
Right.
who only want the money, as if, so you don't want the right to change jobs if you feel like your job isn't treating you right.
Right.
That because they are just work. They might be well paid workers, but they are just
Yeah.
workers.
Right.
And they're, you consider the number of people in the world.
Yes.
Professional athletes are a small minority.
Right.
All of the various professional sports around the world,
Right.
whatever it
Right.
is,
Right.
right? There are very few people who can do it at that level, right? Who are
Right.
world class out of billions of people.
Right.
There might be a few thousand, really,
Mhm.
right? Out of
Mhm.
billions of people. So yeah, they're well compensated. You ought to be complaining about the owner who can pay them that much, right? And
Mhm.
then is charging you all this money to go see them and
But
all.
that's
But
not right.
that's not the discourse
Because
is the
that's not.
self.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well,
Yeah.
the selfish, the so-called selfish athlete, and this is what's ruining sports and why you can't be loyal because the players aren't loyal. They're just going to fall, the money and yeah, if you have the opportunity to move to a different city
Mhm.
because they're going to pay you
Mhm.
3 times as much as you're making now, and the
Mhm.
cost of living is lower,
Mhm.
you're not going to go. I mean, there might maybe you have some other things to think about, your family, whatever, but
Mhm.
you're going to think about it, right? You at
Mhm.
least have the right. So
Well, it's just
anyway,
yeah, it's the question of agency and the expectation of the slave
right,
to offer their body as part of a sacrifice to the to the culture, to the
right,
it's got all
exactly.
of those undertones, those
As a
how
soldier
dare you,
is
huh?
expected to sacrifice their bodies, the soldiers,
Yes.
yes,
Yes, as is the slave.
as
And a
is the
good
slave,
slave will talk about the, good masters as if there could
right?
be such a
As if
thing,
there could be
as if
such a
as
thing.
if that's not an oxymoron,
Thank you.
right?
Right, that's right.
And, we Americans who lay such great claim to the value of liberty and freedom and agency and all of these things make these statements. Make these statements. Oh, you're
Mhm.
selfish. Oh, you're this and the loyalty. It's like, you know what?
Right.
But that's where the limit of the imagination is
That's
the limit of
and
the
exactly.
around the
And
idea.
why those limits are put on our imaginations, right? And the way we're encouraged to talk about these things,
Yeah.
see the relationships, right? And not
Yes.
think about the owner for whom this team might just be a hobby
Hmm.
because their real business is over here where
Right.
they're making billions of dollars.
Right. Right. And I own a team. Right.
And I own right because that's sort of a status symbol among their peers, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
it's a winning team, right? And
Right.
all the better, right? And um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that all is part of the colonial fantasy and the
Yes.
fascist dream,
Yes.
right?
Yes. All these things.
And this what is the particular fascist dream we're talking about now? Because what evoked that title was the way many on the right wing are talking about this deployment of the National Guard in DC, the language that that Trump and his people are using in terms of, always the complaint about high crime, the rejection again of empirical data, where the data demonstrates falling crime. Which of course it's been demonstrating for a very long time, but falling crime specifically in Washington D.C.
Mhm.
and then in all of the other cities that he
Mhm.
named in his press conference the other day.
Mhm. Mhm.
Crime is down. People couldn't believe it. Yeah, crime is down in Chicago.
Mhm.
Right? We know there's
Mhm.
this narrative, and yeah, there was an issue, but crime is down in Chicago. Crime
Mhm.
is down in Baltimore. Crime is down in Los Angeles, right?
Mhm.
If anybody's committing crimes right now, it's ICE, right?
Mhm.
It's disturbing more of the peace than anybody else.
Mhm.
Crime is down in DC. But
Mhm.
what's up in those cities? Population of Black people, other people of
Mhm.
color, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and this right wing and Trump, for a very long time, have wanted to have open season on Black people. I mean, can
Mhm.
we
Yes.
not ignore the racism, the
Yes.
militant white supremacy?
No.
So we started, we started this
Yes.
commemorating the Watts Rebellion, and since then they have wanted to put us in our place and
Mhm.
do so militarily if they could, right? Or
Mhm.
either
Mhm.
have the police and army unleashed on us, the military unleashed on us, or their own militias, right? And so now they're getting to, they're trying to evoke that, right? Or get that going. So why attack DC when crime is down?
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, it's pretext, right? Again, the spectacle, the show of force. We're going to put these people in their place. We need to distract from the Epstein because it ain't going away, and it still ain't going away.
Mm-mm.
But this is distracting, right? And of
Mhm.
course, it's always that we can accomplish more than one thing at a time. We
Mhm.
can do these things we've wanted to do, and they will become the news. So that'll distract from Epstein. But
Mhm.
we always wanted to do this anyway, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, that this
Mhm.
dream of
Yes.
punishing Black
Yes.
people, right?
Yes.
Unleashing hell on Black people,
Yes.
going beyond the lone shooter, Dylan Roof, whoever the knucklehead was in the Buffalo supermarket,
Mhm.
and do that on a larger scale under color of
Yes.
law.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
This is what's at play now. So let's go ahead and share that video real quick. Um, so this is one of these right-wing podcasters, Benny Johnson, who is now part of the White House press corps, right? He was able to ask some questions this week. Um, he's what do they call the new media correspondent or whatever, who gets a seat. And with his own
Mhm.
right wing podcast. We did not go to Benny Johnson's YouTube page and don't want to encourage any traffic on Benny Johnson's YouTube page. We went through Jesse Dollemore, who lives in Washington,
You know
D.C.
something I love almost
Pardon me?
That's okay. Who lives in Washington, D.C. and is like, and so says from his own experience, and he says, yes, it's anecdotal, but the research, right, the empirical data backs up his anecdote. Crime is down in D.C. He was just saying, he described, not in this video, but in
Yeah.
a previous one, just being down on like U and 14th,
Yeah.
just the night before, enjoying the evening, right? And
Right.
so this whole narrative is pretext, right? Pretext for what they would like to unleash on Black people. They
Mhm.
have unleashed on the various immigrant populations,
Mhm.
or folks that they think are immigrants because they are the wrong color or ethnicity. And they've been looking for the pretext to unleash on the African population, including the African American population. Anyway, shall we hear what this fool has to say and then comment?
Okay. And so
Yeah,
I'm
I called you a
random
fool.
clip. Excuse me. Didn't come off of. Mute.
And we can't, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Advocate for the ethnic cleansing of Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. is a representation of the work of your forefathers and mine. It is, by every measure, a very beautiful city architecturally. It is a sacred city. It is a sovereign place with the monuments to great men and women who've sacrificed far more than you or I could ever dream for this country. It must be preserved because the peoples of Earth come here by the millions per year in order to witness the success or failures of our systems. And if you are a proud patriot and you love this country and you wish for it to be reflected honorably to the peoples of Earth, then Washington, D.C. must be swept clean. I believe entire neighborhoods probably need to be emptied, need to be bulldozed. I believe that there are places that are so crime-ridden and so infested that you just need to, you're just going to have to crack down. You're going to have to do the job, and you're going to have to get the crime out of Washington. That's my personal experience. Don't believe the bullshit that you hear online from some reporters. Oh, crime's down in D.C. Well, my infant nearly died in a drug fire after mass shootings. So no, D.C. is not safe. And I can tell you this as a matter of fact, it is one of the worst, most racist narco states and welfare states imaginable. In that neighborhood that I would walk every single day, racial epithets were screamed at us, rocks were thrown at us because we were white people. This city is a sunken place. It is an unsafe place. I mean, if that's what happens to me, imagine what happens to somebody who's visiting here from a foreign country, right? It's totally and wholly unsafe and a scar on the face of our country. And it must be healed. And President Trump is going about that heavy work. So God bless the president.
That's enough of that stuff. But that language is important, right? Infested.
All of it. Yeah.
Right? This is the language, that the Nazis used, right? Infest and vermin and, all this, calling for the razing of entire neighborhoods. Entire neighborhoods are criminal. And he says something at the beginning that made, that he clearly doesn't really know the history of Washington, D.C. and the presence of Black people in Washington, D.C. and, the plantations that surrounded Washington, D.C. and all of this, right? But, that very specific language of cleansing, right? Purifying.
Mm-hmm. Which is such an interesting parallel. I just want to insert this, in the ways that we've learned in Black radical tradition, Black radical analysis, to understand ourselves in these places as colonized communities, right? And in terms of that colonial fantasy, now the articulation of bulldozing whole neighborhoods, obviously the imagery is parallel to what Israel is doing in Gaza now, right? And I gotta say, when those images started coming out and the math, the swaths of destroyed areas, those images started coming out, I wondered, how can they work around to doing that to us? I literally, it came up, how could they work that out? So anyway, so here we are, in terms of the articulation. But something that's also very interesting about DC that out of curiosity, I just looked and see what does gentrification look like in Washington DC? What is it about? And it is acknowledged as the U.S. city with the highest percentage of gentrified neighborhoods.
That's right.
And this
For a long time now, people said you can't really call it Chocolate City anymore.
city anymore. Right. Right. You know, so the perception, you know, and then there's also that sense of, you know, again, that parallel, you know, of the settlers, you know,
Mhm.
and it's, you know, it's almost, you know, it's almost complete. There's a few neighborhoods that
Yeah.
should probably just be bulldozed. Go ahead. It looks like you're going to say something.
Yeah. Well, again, that's why, you know, his comments assume an historically white Washington, D.C. that
Mhm.
somehow was overtaken, where, again, what you
Mm.
don't, so clearly you don't understand, right, that
Mm.
all of these slave-holding presidents, you know, brought their enslaved people with them
Hmm.
right off of Maryland and Virginia, two slave-holding states.
Right. Right. Right.
I mean, there's never been a time there hasn't been a Black presence in Washington, D.C. So
Right.
much so that probably the oldest, or it's one of the oldest, like Black establishment communities,
Mhm.
Washington, D.C., and you know, a well-established Black middle class
Mhm.
because of
Mhm.
its how long there's been a
Mhm.
Black community there, you know, connected to governance and,
Right.
you
Right.
know, serving the elite and
Right.
in all certain kinds of capacities, right? Because, you
Mhm.
know, again, one of the undertold stories of our enslavement here is
Mhm.
we were not only put to work for our back power, but for our
Mhm.
brain power, right? The
Mhm.
folks who, you know, trained as clerks and whatnot,
Mhm.
who
Mhm.
then, you know, had the good sense to take
Mhm.
that learning and get it to other people, right? The
Right.
necessary book learning. But all the various kinds of things, you know, that, you know, we have done and how long Black people have been in that space as an internal colony. Um, that again, the colonial fantasy of the settlers,
Mhm.
the settlers, you know, natal habitation or somehow.
Right. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but no, you know,
Mhm.
that's not the case, right?
Mhm.
Um, there's an indigenous people. The river is named for them, the Potomac,
Mhm.
and there has
Mhm.
been an African
Hmm.
population in the city since its founding.
Mhm.
And so these narratives of settler nativity, I guess you might say, or native
Right.
character,
Right.
and
Neonatalism.
somehow the foreignness of those who have been there. Um, yeah, and again, you know,
Yeah.
the doubling, always the doubling down on the crime, right? As the
Yeah.
crime ridden
Yeah.
city, the disease carriers, crime carriers, um, and of course, there's nobody more racist than Black people in this white racist country, right?
Absolutely. But right, the bright bardization, and
Yeah,
this is the right dude that has what, as you said, the new media um uh press corps,
yeah,
you know, represented as the bright bardization of, which is just nothing more than major, long-term, consistent, coordinated, well-resourced propaganda campaign. So now they're building these castles in the sand. They're building these, you know, these narratives out of whole cloth. And so I could just, as he was saying, I could just hear somebody repeating it, you know, in their little enclaves, thinking, passing on what they think is, you know, vitally revealed, previously hidden
Yeah.
narrative, hidden
Right.
story. Did you know that there are narco welfare racist, black racists running states? And we've got to protect ourselves. We've got to, because we can't have the, appealing again to that common false notion and that common false sense of the reality of something called reverse racism.
Right.
But you could see how that, like, I mean, if flat Earth can catch on, and find itself being re-articulated, any of this and all of this can catch on in a era.
I don't know how popular Benny Johnson is. He has an audience, though, right? And
I'm not talking about Benny Johnson. I'm talking about
I know.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But along with Benny Johnson, right? Whatever his audience is, right? He's just one part of a much larger network. And again, it's only been amplified, right, by the social media platforms, because we remember this stuff from the 1970s, right? And the long misperception that white people are victimized by black criminals. Black people, the myth that black people commit more crime than anybody else in the country. That is numerically impossible. Not even how crime works. And that black people are the primary ones committing crimes against, murdering, raping white people.
Come on.
Which again is just
utterly ridiculous.
It's not even how crime works. So
no,
folks, how does crime work? Most crimes are proximity crimes.
When it's interpersonal.
Most crime, and even when it isn't interpersonal, it's easier to rob somebody in your neighborhood, right? Than going across town.
Meaning that as an
interpersonal, though.
That's what I mean, actually, by interpersonal. I mean person on person.
Yeah. Most
crimes, compared toward. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Exactly. What I'm saying, even then, even when it isn't interpersonal, it's still proximity, right? You're likely to commit a crime closer to where criminals are likely to commit crimes closer to where they live. Their proximity, then again, go across town, right? And the burglars who go all the way across town to another neighborhood, it's just that's mostly television. It happens, but that's not how most crime happens, right?
No,
that's not. That it's mostly proximity and particularly interpersonal.
Yes.
So if you are a self-described white person, you are most likely, if you're going to be victimized by a crime, you're going to be victimized by a white perpetrator, because that's typically how it works. Yes, we can all come up with anecdotes.
An anecdote,
but ordinarily, right? If you are Korean,
American,
and you live in K-Town, and you become a victim of a crime, you're probably going to be victimized by another Korean who may live around there, or somebody else who lives near you, right? Proximity. But that's not, the myth for 50 years, 60 years, if not longer.
Please.
Black people are
the
number one criminals. They commit the most crimes, and and they specifically commit crimes against white people.
Right.
Even
as wild bands of teenagers. I said as wild bands of teenagers.
As wild bands of teenagers. Yes.
Which has been being pushed for, I know that it's been in my memory for a couple of decades, and I think you named it as being a narrative.
At least since the 90s.
Okay, at least since the 90s.
And really the 80s, right? But because in the 90s is when, I say the 90s because that's when we start hearing that language of super predators talking about and
Mhm.
also the phrase wilding becomes popular in the
Right.
90s, right?
Right.
And all that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so again, the point we're making is they're acting on the fantasies they've created, and again using it as a pretext. This is all pretext
Yes.
for the kind of clampdown they want to do.
Yes.
The current president of the United States, the 34-time felon and insurrectionist, has is a well-known racist, has felt has expressed his grievance with black people for decades, always couching it in oh no, I'm not racist, it's just that do right. Hey, what will he say in that interview? Nobody has it better than like a college educated black right now, because you're going to get preferential treatment and all this type of stuff he was saying in the 80s. And
Mm.
the reports of him at demanding that black employees be cleared out of the casino before he walked through, and all credible, right? We know the kind of language he uses. Um, the passion with which he called for the execution of the exonerated five in New York in the 90s, right? And that was when that language of wilding was being used, because they were wilding in the park that night or whatever. So longtime racist, taking it personal that there would be these demonstrations during 2020, the summer of 2020, making him look bad, wanting the military to shoot those Black Lives Matter protesters, the black people in particular, and any of their non-black allies and supporters, right? How dare you? And has just been waiting for an opportunity.
Yeah.
We know how much he dislikes smart black people generally, and especially smart black women. So he's ready to go after, whatever we may think about their politics ultimately, right, as kind of neo-colonial. But we see what's happening. So, what he loves to call black women who are clearly more accomplished than him, low IQ, right?
Well,
That's
see, I gotta insert something there, right? Because the other piece that, and this is a real thing we're looking at here, the much pointed out struggles that he has with literacy, with fluidity, with reading, with, what I'm saying? So this is like, all of the psychological profiling that's been done on the dude and all of this, but on a in a non-neurotic person, you know what I'm saying, who's a non certifiably neurotic person. They have an issue with the person who outdoes them in the areas that they would like to be, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, he sees, since when does a white supremacist man, a white supremacist white man, not have a problem with a white supremacist misogynist white man, because he's heavily invested in all of that, and in his sense, feeding his sense of superiority. Because what does he have to, you know what I'm saying? You're constantly getting information about the hollowness of this man's credentials. So anyway, that clearly that just triggered me a bit, because it tracks. It tracks.
Right. So here's his opportunity, right? To crack down, right? To
lash out.
put people, as he sees it, in their place. Take over the cities that must be failing. How could they not be failing? They're overrun by black people, immigrants. They have Democratic mayors, and they happen to be black women or black men. They can't be doing well. Even New York, where his buddy Eric Adams is doing his bidding, but that don't matter apparently because it's still a hellhole,
Mhm.
right? It's still
That's right.
bedlam. All the kind of language that he used, right? And all that language is
Right.
so critical because that's all they have, and the narrative is everything, right? People, we live in narrative,
Yes.
and the narrative is everything, and it resonates with people because that has been the discourse about the inner city since white flight. And white flight started in what, the right after World War II, you get the white flight, and since then that's been the narrative, right? The
Crime infested inner cities.
crime infested inner cities, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't say it as much now because the anti-Semitism has been muted and weaponized, right? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because that's who's in the cities, right? These Negroes, these Jews, these immigrants, these the sites of the downfall of Western civilization. And that, and that the use of that language, right? I wasn't in that clip as I recall, but the Washington as the center of Western
Yes.
civilization and therefore
Yeah.
needing to be saved, and
Yes.
all this, right? And so,
Yes.
wanting to bring attention to that, because if people have been wondering, right, and if they've been wondering where are the black people, when are they going to get on the streets, when do we get our pretext, so they created their pretext to be able to go after,
Mm-hmm.
although of course, just like happened in LA,
Mm-hmm.
people of DC are out protesting,
Mm-hmm.
get out of
Mm-hmm.
our city, and a
Yeah.
lot of the people out protesting are white,
Absolutely.
right? Once
Just like so you've got quite a dilemma here.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a dilemma, because it does get back. You have to deal with this way in which you are a minority, and if we're talking cultural wars, you're also a cultural minority.
Exactly.
So, I don't know if you can get that great replacement seed planted, fat fields planted fast enough to get those white people out of the street on behalf of uh, white, let's say white middle class people, white upper middle
Mm-hmm.
class and middle class people out of the street on behalf of the people you're attacking, the black
Mm-hmm.
and brown, now the homeless, which translates so often into black. But you see,
Since
hey,
black people are overrepresented among the unhoused.
we're overrepresented among the house, and I'm sure that's regionally, has a regional expression, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm very clear that I'm looking at in Culver City. There's all kinds of, there are houseless people of all kinds, and people of European descent are but very well represented.
Mm-hmm.
They are, you know, the Hoovertown phenomenon
Mm-hmm.
of that time is all that this is spread out.
Yes.
These encampments, you know what I'm
Black
saying?
people are overrepresented, like we are in most categories, right? Because
Yeah.
you know, because we are over, given our numbers in the population nationally,
Yes.
we are overrepresented in all of these negative categories.
Yes.
As our veterans, right? As our
Mhm.
veterans, overrepresented
Mm-hmm.
in these
Absolutely.
the unhoused.
Absolutely.
And yeah, that's so what are they, so so you're going to clean the streets up of the
Yeah.
homeless, you're going to clean the
Clean.
streets, right?
Right.
But what are you going to, so you're putting them, you're putting them in housing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're putting them in housing, these some more concentration camps and things like that,
Right.
right? Because they're not putting them in apartments, right? Or so,
No.
it's they're not solving the problem, right? They're
No.
yeah,
Yeah. They're
and
boosting geo
encouraging
groups'
this, right?
revenues. Mm-hmm.
So it's important for people to be aware of, and black people in particular to be aware of the racism is, the racism is evident. and they have tipped their hand that, if you were wondering when we were coming for you, here we come.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how, again, we will continue to see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm less concerned about the National Guard deployments. I mean, I'm not unconcerned about them,
Mm-hmm.
what that means, but what I'm concerned about, what concerns me more, is the permission it gives to these militias and these lone actors, who feel deputized, or who want to show up to help the police, or who now know they can just join ICE.
Absolutely. At a handsome salary. Yeah.
No.
Apparently, at least.
Well, yeah, and certainly probably making more than they were making,
For sure.
or if they were working at all, because unemployment is up. We're at a 5-year high in unemployment right now,
Right.
and it only looks to go up. And certainly, unemployment is gonna go up in Washington because of all the laid off federal workers. And I think it's September that
Mm.
that really, those who were fired, but they leave in September or something like that. So, and again, what that means for Black unemployment, which, for all of their faults, and there are many, aiding and abetting a genocide being chief among them, Black employment was at a all-time high under the previous administration. I mean, if that's what people were looking for in terms of, are things better for us?
Mm-hmm.
Well, your employment
Mm-hmm.
was up. The small business loans were up. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
all the various little things that people look
Mm-hmm.
at as measures, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, all that stuff is going in the wrong direction now.
Mm-hmm.
And I, the hit that the Black nation is going to feel because of the federal layoffs, right? And
Yes.
and what that means for a Black middle class.
Yes.
Because again, we are another overrepresentation, but
Mm-hmm.
we are overrepresented in the public sector.
Mm-hmm.
Then a lot of that has to do with the racist hiring in the private sector.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can we just say that?
Mm-hmm.
The private sector has been very racist in its hiring, and the public sector has been there, which also usually means actually making less money than one might, in the private sector in some cases, right? But anyway, that's that. I always thought, that was kind of an underreported aspect of the Doge firings, and I always thought part of the motivation, they knew that that was going to be a blow to the Black community.
Who said it immediately was Roland Martin.
Okay.
He said it immediately, if not sooner. This is attack on Black American economic stability.
Absolutely.
This
right?
is
That historic, and again, this fool, who knows, Benny Johnson talking about who knows nothing about Washington. I mean, that is, is why there is a long, stable middle class in Washington, D.C. area. It's why the most affluent Black community in the United States is in Prince George's County, outside of Washington. Second one being in our county, right, in our neighborhood, right, the Baldwin Hills, etc. So yeah, they knew what they were doing. Or at least, I at least believe Musk knew what he was doing. I don't know that Trump has that much understanding of anything.
Yeah.
Because he lacks curiosity to know. Right? So,
yeah.
But anyway,
yeah,
it's 9:30.
It indeed it is.
Yeah, that went fast.
It did. It's a rich topic, and And immediate, and immediate.
And we covered a lot, I
And we
think.
covered a lot. The last thing to throw in,
Mhm,
without expanding in any
mhm,
way, shape, or form, is also this being, well, actually, I got to make it two things. Heard a brother came across a brother talking about describing this as a cat having a castling effect
mm,
before a deeper onslaught into, what he pointed out was the articulation that he's already articulated going into blue cities, and
mhm.
with this claim and the crime and all the blue cities and whatever, but talking about consolidating Washington D.C. before attempting to steal the or to uh,
Yeah,
subvert elections alter
yeah,
the
yeah.
presidential.
I think I heard that also, right?
Yeah,
That
and but yeah, that part, that this is also the um in everything that is making it desperately necessary, but that the pretext for general militarization
right.
of
So
cities.
again, that it something I've been thinking about, um, and under this situation, and under these conditions we're dealing with now, this intensification, right? Because it's the same colonialism, but it's
Yeah,
just intensified, right?
yeah.
And that's what's his name, the Italian communist, Antonio Gramsci,
Mm-hmm.
who writes about that hegemonic struggle, right?
Uh-huh.
But the hegemonic struggle, even like within a party, is factions battle within a party and across parties. Um, but it's so interesting. It's really interesting reading. But it comes down to, after he goes through all of this kind of, it goes through this kind of this description and analysis of the different contending forces in a society, the different class interests, right, and um, the factions that may be in conflict, and it all comes down to, it says, it's some like, in the final analysis, it is the military
Hmm.
that resolves the question ultimately, right? And I keep thinking, right,
Mhm.
what about the military? Are they, is every part of the military going to go for this? As we've talked about before, they've been doing purges in the military. The that deployment to Los Angeles, I'm not sure about the Marines, but the California National Guard, it was a major blow to the Guard's morale. Recruitment has dropped off in the Guard. They've been getting resignations. There were reports of acts of civil disobedience within the Guard
Hmm.
to express their displeasure, doing things like defecating in the
Right.
military Humvees,
Mhm.
defecating in the showers, right,
Mhm.
to demonstrate their displeasure with the
Mhm.
deployment and the sense of the waste of their time, and
Mhm.
also being put in a position to where they have to be opposed to the citizens, and many of whom might be their family members. Just and the what did they call it? The malignant compliance
Hmm.
during his military parade, where the soldiers were not marching in sharp
Mhm.
order and all, and it was just kind of funky. And
Mhm.
so as these consolidating power in these cities, what part of the military? How long will the military go for it? Or are they going to begin to get defections, people dropping out, etc.? That was, at least as I learned it in school, that was like the critical factor in the Russian Revolution.
Hmm.
The Tsarist army was like, we've had enough. We're joining the revolutionaries.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, that. So anyway, we will see how this plays out. But that castling effect, right? And because I'd heard that also, right? It's sort of getting control of Washington militarily as kind of a center point before. How much of the military is going to go for that, though? And how much of these National Guard units in particular going to rebel? Right? When are we going to see the fragging and stuff like that may happen? So on so many levels, right? That the empire's fragmenting. The overseas empire, right? They're losing control and influence and all that. And here, right? This it's not regional in the same way that it was in the mid 19th century, but it is the factions, right? It's severely factionalized communities in the United States right now, and we can continue to see that anger at these town halls that Republican.
Absolutely.
So I didn't mean to keep talking this long. Because but yeah, I just wanted to comment on what that right there, the castling effect, and what is going to ultimately happen with the military.
Yeah, all of these are questions.
The
narrative of invincibility and
we know there are fascists in the military, but they're anti-fascist.
Fascists in the military. Yeah.
And so anyway,
all this being true. So
yeah, that we can close, right?
Yeah.
And this is they're playing out the colonial fantasy and the fascist dream through this deployment and the other deployments that we can expect, right? Mayor Bass was right. Los Angeles was the first test case. And they gathered whatever information they gathered, part of which is these people are going to resist. They are not intimidated. And they're seeing the same thing in Washington, D.C. These people aren't going to resist. These people are going to resist. They aren't intimidated. And there's a whole bunch of these white people coming out here instead of the black people. And everybody seems to be good with that because they think black people have done, they did their part, right? Now y'all go handle the mess you made. So there seems to be a lot of that feeling out there among people. Anyway, the fascists still don't get to win, though.
Say it again.
The fascists still don't get to win.
Still don't get to win.
No.
Still don't get to win. No. Nope.
No, they don't. And one thing we've learned this week as we're saying goodnight, some folks have been pointing this out. They what do they say? They can dish it out, but they can't take it. They've been getting trolled, right? Gavin Newsom trolled the president so great on Twitter the other day, but there's been what's her name, Jennifer from the I've Had It podcast, who went in on MAGA voters, so much so that they did a whole segment on her on Fox News about how this is really over the line and this.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh yeah, because she went off on them, like something to the effect of, when I see we were at a Mexican restaurant the other night, and you see these triple Trumpers come in, and I think to myself, how dare you come into this Mexican restaurant when you would just as well have these people rounded up and sent out. Don't go to any Mexican restaurants. Don't go to any Chinese restaurants. Don't go to any Indian restaurants. Take your ass to Cracker Barrel. That's where you belong. Cracker Barrel. Just go to Cracker Barrel.
Your ass to Cracker Barrel.
Right? But then she points out, and so they did this
Chili's.
Right? So apparently there was this reverse. What was a reverse Coors Light or Bud Light effect, right? So because she said that about Cracker Barrel, so a whole bunch of folks were like, well, we're going to go to Cracker Barrel to show you. So,
Good.
but then she was like, well, I thought you guys were supposed to be, I mean, I said go to Cracker Barrel, but I thought you guys were supposed to be boycotting Cracker Barrel because they're still pro DEI and pro Pride. So they're like,
what you gonna do? What you gonna do?
But anyway, her point, you know, and we know what her point was, right? As they, you know, in the commentary on Fox, they completely ignored what her actual point was, to talk about how good Cracker Barrel is, and everybody goes to Cracker Barrel. And I see black people at Cracker Barrel. I mean, I don't know, you know.
Yeah, the point is, like an all-American restaurant, go to Denny's.
Go to Denny's, right?
Denny's, go to Chili's, go to Arby's, go to, you know, whatever. Yeah. Go
Right.
to McDonald's.
Where you're still likely going to be served by somebody you'd like to see sent out of the country.
All of that. All of
Yeah,
that.
So
All
anyway, the point being, they have thin skins.
Mm-hmm.
Trump can't stand what they're doing on South Park. Kristi Noem about had a fit after her South Park takedown, which was just wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And John Oliver just eviscerated Dean Cain about becoming an ICE agent. Just, I was embarrassed for him.
Yeah.
So
John Oliver had his way. Yeah.
He did.
Had his way with him. Yeah.
And we need to do that though, right? Because they can't take it. They are the snowflakes.
Can't take it, and they can't take this earth. You know what I mean? F a country, a polity, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Your claim, your sense of claim to this earth that is walked by all. No, this, what is it? Truth crushed to earth will rise.
Right.
You don't get to, you know, just get to no longer. People are fed up, tired, and exhausted with this with the, you know, with what having to revolve around your myth of being a center point, the center point of the universe.
Exactly.
You know, the work has been the academic, you know, whatever the effects of colonization and Christianization in the name of enslavement and all of that, and whatever those effects are residual as the internalized white supremacy is, it's also has been very handily neutralized by research and the distribution of other knowledge, other verifiable knowledge. And it's done. It's done. Let it go. Let it go. It's done. It's not, the cat's not going back in the bag.
No, it's too late for that.
It's done. The sun has set on the empire. You know, whatever. Yeah, all of
the sun has set on the empire, or at least it's on its way down.
It's on its way down. It's on its way down.
You know,
and
that is happening right now.
Something different. And as we are fighting for, pushing for, living for fair, just, healthy, happy, creative, with all the things that human society can be. You know, the only way in which this accumulation of this hoarding of wealth and materials and resources can be redeemed by the liberation of the peoples of the planet from abject, from misery. You know, let's make a real human society. We're not here to serve you. We're not here to
right.
People aren't, the earth is not here. The earth is not yours in the fullness thereof.
No, it's not yours. Exactly.
Go rest yourself.
That's right. So
anyway,
shake yourself out of the fantasy, wake up from your fascist dream, or you're going to live in a nightmare for the rest of your life.
That's it. And destroy the planet.
And destroy the planet people, on the way.
Destroy
or the planet is going to destroy you.
You. For real. For real.
Yeah.
Anyway. So yeah,
we can end
done
there.
2 hours.
Yeah. Um, all right. So thank you, folks. Thank you for the conversation. As we've been for several meetings now, right? Zeroing in on the current fascist moment, and what there's a call to not let this be normal, not normalize this, but it was already normal, right? This is just the putrid blossoming of the poison plant, right? That had been, germinating and growing since the mid 20th century, and particularly, gaining momentum and really set on this course with the second Ronald Reagan campaign, because he also ran in '76 and lost, right? Lost the primary. But with that campaign, in 78, 79 for the 1980 election, once he was elected, put in place, and the Heritage Foundation put in front of him, right, a plan for leadership or whatever. And we've been on that trajectory. The Heritage Foundation, Hoover Institute, Liberty University, though it didn't exist yet, I guess. But anyway, Path, Hillsdale College, Path, since then. So, this is where we are now, right? It has reached this point, and now it can do only what flowers do, right? They have their bloom and then they wither. What we don't want is to spread any seeds, right? Stomp them out, scorch them before they can germinate. Continue to germinate.
And make the earth unreceptive.
Make the earth unreceptive.
Also must
And
make earth
on that point, we know that there are folks actually doing this work in other parts of the world, where they see, and I'm particularly thinking of the rest of the colonizing world, the global north, right, where they are actively fighting this. There might be parties that are gaining, that have some popularity, but they're also being resisted, and Palestine resistance is showing the way very much, right? So let's keep that in mind as we go forward. No to colonialism, no to fascism. And if we're going to get rid of colonialism and fascism, you got to get rid of capitalism, because you can't have either one of them without it, right? Capitalism is colonialism. Capitalism produces fascism. So let's get rid of that too. There is a better way. Let's find the better way. Let's do the better way. You want to say good night, Tasha?
Good night, Tasha.
Did we leave some things out?
We didn't leave anything out.
Subscribe.
Oh, yes, we did. Please
like,
subscribe, share, comment. Please. We always throw in comment.
There we go. Like, subscribe, share. Please right? We need because y'all know how the algorithm works.
Yeah.
So to help us with our algorithm. Subscribe to help us with our algorithm. Yeah. We got something to say. We're not dummies, please. There's some dummies on this.
So, and we are not. We're gonna get slicker. We're gonna get tighter. Right. We want to have a conversation. We want you to start having a conversation. That's interesting. Let me think about this. Let me go fix this. Let me do this.
Or if you have disagreement, right? Engage. Yes. So do those things. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Subscribe, like, share, comment. That's teacher, right? Say it 3 times at least, and then they'll remember, or they have a better chance of remembering. So
right on.
Subscribe, like, share. What did I leave out?
Time.
Subscribe, like, share, comment.
Comment.
Okay, so
Okay.
you already said good night, Tasha.
I said good night, Tasha.
So good night, Tasha. And good night, folks. We will see you next week. I don't know what we're going to talk about. We'll talk about what we're going to talk about, but we'll see you next week. What do I always say? Revelation reveals the truth. Revolution is the only solution.